Okay, bismillah. Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Is everybody able to see me and hear me?
Yes.
Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد فنسأل الله عز وجل أن يجعل هذه البداية بداية خير وأن يجعلنا وإياكم من المستمعين للقول والمتبعين أحسنه إنه سبحانه ولي ذلك والقادر عليه ثم أما بعد. With the will of Allah Jalla wa Ala, we are about to embark on a journey which will take us to one of the, if not most important sciences in Islam. And it is all about knowing how to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as you will see, believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not just something you do with the heart, but also something which need to be understood by the mind. And this is where a lot of Muslims today seem to be coping with a lot of unclear information or things they don't seem to be understanding 100%. It's what is the correct belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How should I be believing in the attributes of Allah, in the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And after having gone on a journey through the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which was the let us say practical side of believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are now going to start with the journey through the theoretical dimensions of belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because believing in Allah Jalla wa Ala, I mean a correct belief in Allah Jalla wa Ala is not based on taqleed, yani on blind following. In fiqh you will always hear us say you should be a muqallid of the ulama. But here our scholars say in Aqeedah one needs to investigate. One needs to, and the reason why, it's because it is about al-ghayb. It is about the world of the unseen, or rather the master of the world of the unseen. So we are not allowed to believe in Allah the way we think we have to believe in Him, but rather after having investigated, if of course we have the ability to do this, and after having shed a light on the differences within the world of Aqeedah, so that we are sure when we go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we believe in Him in a way that He wants us to believe in Him. We are going to do this in the light of the book إيضاح الدليل of Badr Deen ibn Jama'ah rahimahullah azza wa jal. And who he is and what his book stands for and what the position and status of his book truly is within the science of Aqeedah will be explained in the second class. This is merely an introduction to the knowledge of Aqeedah, merely something that we, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will use as a key to enter into this palace of knowledge bi'idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let us have a look here. When you are going to look, why this topic? I mean, why are we going to shed a light on the knowledge of Aqeedah? Aren't there sufficient other things to worry about, in the world? And I would say yes and no. I mean, it is not because you worry about this that you can't worry about that. It's not because this is important that that is not important. And this is usually where we fall short. We are going to focus on one thing and forget to focus on the other. And we Muslims, we are people of all dimensions. Now we are of the social dimension, the physical dimension, the spiritual dimension, and the emotional dimension, and the rational one, and so much more. So this is but a part of a thing which we need to, which we need to understand. So why this topic? First, because Muslims have lost their connection with God Almighty, meaning that the ilm of Aqeedah, I already said, is not like learning what the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stand for. It is more preserving the asl, or the core of your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the names of Allah Jalla wa Ala, they tell you what He does, but they don't tell you how to believe in Him. So when you now lose your core belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is how should I believe in Him, in His attributes, in His being, how should I believe with my mind in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while the names of Allah is how should I believe with my heart in Allah Jalla wa Ala. And we need to combine these two. And this is why some of the scholars said someone with an incorrect belief of Allah Jalla wa Ala will not attain spiritual illumination. Yani he will receive no fath. And the reason why is obvious and clear. The reason why is because, yes, you might become very spiritual, you might be praying during the night, you might be in fear for Allah Jalla wa Ala, but eventually the knowledge of Aqeedah, the science of Aqeedah will get you and lift you to a point where you say, I cannot imagine God in any way. I cannot imagine him. He exceeds everything I think. He's not the opposite of it. It is not that which I think him to be. He is how he is. So when you get to that point, that is exactly what you need to drown into what we call al-mushahada, yani observing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your heart, because now your mind found rest, because now you know how to believe in Allah Jalla wa Ala. So that's the first reason. The second reason, ahsanallahu ilaykum, is because a correct belief in Allah, in God Almighty, is He's right over us. And this is very often what we forget. We think like, okay, I believe in Allah like this. But people never ask themselves the question, is the way that I believe in Allah Jalla wa Ala the way He wants me to believe in Him? This is not the question we ask ourselves. Being it the Salafi or being it somebody else, yani, or the Ash'ari or the Sufi or anybody. Like the Ash'ari, of course, yes, because he dived, he went through this knowledge. But in brief, what I want to say is we should ask ourselves as individuals the question, is the way that I believe in Allah the way Allah wants me to believe in Him? That's the very first thing. And the second thing is the reason why I believe in Allah the way I do because I've only heard about one way, and because I heard people say something and warning against something else. Like when you sit with a scholar, for example, an Ash'ari scholar, he will warn you against the Salafiyya. When you sit with a Salafi scholar, he will warn you against the Ash'a'ira. So, well, now, am I distancing myself from that Aqeedah because of the Shaykh? Or am I distancing myself because I believe it is correct? So this is also one of the important questions that we need and we have to ask ourselves. So a correct belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not by wishful thinking. It is by studying, investigating, and of course, if one holds on to that which the majority of the Muslims held on to throughout these centuries, then one of course can't go wrong, because the Prophet ﷺ said that his community does not gather around the table of batil, of lies. They don't come together they don't agree as a majority to follow the path of deviation and misguidance. Then the third thing is, and that's a very important one, there is confusion, unclarity, because of false claims being made. What these false claims are and who are making them is, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something we are going to speak about later on. But this series is not to attack people. So it is not to attack a Salafi, or it is not to attack a Tablighi, it is not to attack a Mu'tazili. It is about the thought. It is about the creed. It is about the dogma. It is about that which we are going to discuss, meaning how to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and nothing more and nothing less. But of course, sometimes names will be mentioned, but it will always be with respect. Like I might be referring to a scholar that we might disagree with, but that doesn't mean, one, that he's not a scholar, and that doesn't mean, two, that we hate him, and three, that we are against him, and four, that we're not going to make dua for him. Exactly the same with Imam Zamakhshari, al-Mu'tazili. He's Mu'tazili, but his tafsir, yani al-Kashaf, you don't hear our ulama say, like, an al-Mu'tazila may, Imam Zamakhshari, the Mu'tazila, may God curse him, said. Nobody does this. It is just to clarify who someone is, and the reason why we clarify this is because it's a public record, isn't it? It's not like they're hiding it. I'm an Ash'ari, I'm a Salafi, I'm a Diti, I'm a Dati, and I'm a Daddy as well. So confusion, unclarity, and false claims. So we are going to get rid of these confusions, unclarities, and false claims in the light of adillah, in the light of proofs. And these proofs Now they will be from the Quran, from the Sunnah, and an explanation of the ulama al-ummah. That are proofs for us, right? Because we understand the Quran and the Sunnah according to Salaf al-ummah. So we follow the Salaf. And that doesn't mean you're a Salafi. Now, the Salafiyya and Salaf is a different thing. So we agree on that point. We need to follow the Salaf. Now we need to follow the Salaf. So that is what we are going to do. So belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as I said, is theoretical and practical. When we say theoretical and practical, we mean on the practical side, yani the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is when we study the names of Allah. So that's on the left. So we study the names of Allah, and that's something practical. Yani, of course, you need science, you need knowledge for that, but it will lead to illumination, inward illumination, outward transformation, divine connection, and will allow you to see the manifestation of the names in the universe. So this is the practical side, meaning it is the iman booster, it is the spiritual transformer. So that's the practical side. When we study Aqeedah, yani in the way that we are going to do it now, then it's merely a theoretical approach. And this is for protection, defense, clarification, and guarantee. Yani this is to protect your faith. And to protect yourself, yani also against a bad ending, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, yani will judge you, yani either positively or negatively in the light of your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It also a defense, meaning when you study the Aqeedah from a theoretical point of view, it will allow you to defend yourself and your Aqeedah. Now, meaning against innovation, but also against doubts, especially today when we are talking about all these different sciences, metaphysics and quantum, this and that. So very often people seem to get lost where yani, they don't know where to draw the line between science and belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Hamza Yusuf in 2017, a very nice talk, and I will share it inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where he spoke about yani, that belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not just based on thinking, wishful thinking, but that there are proofs, logical proofs and others which can actually in reality show that there is a God. It is not something just like in the air, we can prove it. So anyway, so then clarification. It is also to clarify, and to clarify who you are and what you stand for and to whom you belong and to whom you want to subscribe or ascribe yourself. And a guarantee, yani, that your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is correct. So I would say that this is the difference between the practical side of Aqeedah and the theoretical one, which we are going to do now. Which doesn't mean, barakallahu fikum, when we speak, when in Aqeedah we talk about al-wahdaniyya, yani the wahdaniyya to that, yani the oneness, yani of the being, and the oneness of the deeds, and the oneness of the sifat, of the characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we don't mean that this won't increase your faith or won't make you more spiritual. That's not what we're trying to say. Because eventually when you will have a look, and we're not going to do this here, you will study that in al-Barahin and al-Sanusi and so forth, yani you will see that when you talk about wahdaniyya to the wahdaniyya of the sifat of Allah Jalla wa Ala, you are going to see, like, subhanallah, Allah knows, and His knowing is one, meaning it can't be divided into different compartments where you will say now He knows this and He knows that and He knows that. No, He knows everything. Wallahu bi kulli shay'in alim. Yani Allah knows everything at the same time and all the different possibilities at the same time. Like how many PCs are there in the world, and now how many PCs and hairs on human heads are there in the world. Like all these different possibilities and calculations are known by Allah without having to calculate them, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yani wa ahsa kulla shay'in adada, because He does al-ihsa, He encompasses everything in all its shapes and numbers and forms. So when you study these things, although they are very theoretical, they will eventually get you to a stage, as I said in the very beginning, as I mentioned at the very beginning, where you will be stupefied that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above everything you can imagine, and you can't imagine Allah Jalla wa ala. So this is belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the different sciences, you know, there are different reasons why knowledge was written down. They are not all the same, exactly as these eggshells here. They are not all the same. And the reason why scholars have written down knowledge in the shape and form that we find it today is different, meaning that which stimulated and motivated and inspired them or pushed them forward was different. It was different. So let us have a look so that we know why Aqeedah was written. Because people say, you know, believe in Allah can't be this complex. Well, fiqh wasn't complex either. Fiqh was something very clear. And now when you want to study fiqh to become a scholar, you need to know a lot. So it's the same. Yes, belief in Allah Jalla wa ala at the basis was very simple. It was just believing Allah is Alim, Allah knows everything. And the problem aroused or appeared when people started to introduce things which were alien to Islam, which were not a part of Islam, into Islam. So this is what they started doing. So let's have a look. There are many reasons why scholars compiled books and wrote essays. And these are the four. These four, you will not find them with this structure in a book. This is the way that I look at it. So if you disagree, then you disagree. It's just me. So I always say, رَدًّا وَاضْطِرَارًا وَبَيَانًا وَتَيْسِيرًا أو بَيَانًا وَاخْتِيارًا. So when we are going to look, barakallahu fikum, then you will see that there are four reasons why the scholars wrote books. So the first one here, barakallahu fikum, is this one here, right? You have refutation. The second one is necessity. And then on the lower half, you have clarification and facilitation. So the first one is refutation, meaning that not some of the sciences were written to refute innovative, wrong thoughts, evil thoughts that were introduced into our religion. Very often they came from Persia, or they came from a Roman belief or a Greek belief, and so much more, especially through philosophy. And we're not getting into that now, but you will see that like the Khalqul Quran, that people say that the Quran was created. Yes, it came through the Mu'tazila, but it came through the leaders of Persia who had this kind of belief. So to come back now, so it was refutation. So now how does that stand with the Ilm al-Aqeedah? Ilm al-Aqeedah was in reality to refute. Because the ilm of Aqeedah at the very beginning was not written in the way that we know it today. At the very beginning we had we called fiqh. Fiqh was actually the belief in Allah Jalla wa ala. That was at the very beginning. When people spoke about fiqh, then they spoke about belief in Allah Jalla wa ala. And then it was subdivided into fiqh akbar and fiqh asghar. Meaning the greater fiqh and the minor fiqh. And the greater fiqh was the fiqh, the understanding of Allah's or your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the minor fiqh was the fiqh which had to do with the actions of the ibad, of the servants, meaning that which we know now today as jurisprudence. So now when we went a bit later on, then fiqh was merely that which was merely referring to that which we know as being fiqh today, and the other one was Aqeedah. So now they wrote this to refute, to refute the many different deviations which were introduced into Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ warned against them. Like the Prophet ﷺ spoke about the Khawarij in Bukhari. The Khawarij who would declare someone to be a disbeliever merely because he committed a major sin. And the Prophet ﷺ spoke about them, and he said that they are ejected from religion like an arrow from a bow. And he said, Hum kilabu ahli nar, they are the people of hellfire, the dogs of the people of hellfire. And the Prophet ﷺ spoke about the Qadariyah, people who say that there is no predestination and no divine force at work for the moment, for example. So, and he said that the Qadariyah are the Majus hadhihi al-ummah, are the Majus of this ummah, the animators. So if you are going to look, you see that the Prophet ﷺ warned against it also when he said this community will be divided into what? This community will be divided into 73 Yani 73 sects or groups. One of them is in paradise, وهي الجماعة, and this is the Jama'ah. And this is where the scholars got Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah from. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, هي ما أنا عليه وأصحابي. It is that which I follow and my companions as well. I hear a mic on the other side which has been activated. So,
okay, apologies. Sorry, just quick question on that hadith that you mentioned.
Yes.
Is there also another hadith which mentions that there will be 73 who are saved, or something along those lines? Or have I?
Okay.
You're not.
Inshallah, we will get to that. Bi-idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what the Prophet ﷺ said, 73 for hell and 1 for paradise. But what the scholars say is that not necessarily that these 72 sects will end up forever in hellfire, and also not meaning that no single one of them can be saved before entering into hellfire, meaning that they deserve hellfire temporarily because they are the people of La ilaha illallah, but not that one, they will be everlasting therein, and two, that every single individual who has that belief will end up in hellfire temporarily. So this is what we need to take away from that, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Ma ana alayhi wa ashabi, that which I follow and my companions. So you see, and the Prophet ﷺ spoke about the Jama'ah. And this is why the scholars later on gave themselves a name which was Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So that was refutation of innovation. And this is what we find in the book of Imam al-Tahawi, for example, rahimahullah azza wa jal. You see that although it's a book in Aqeedah, you will find him mentioning wiping over the leather socks to show that Ahlul Sunnah differentiates itself from the Shia, who believe that we are allowed to wipe over our bare feet. And also he mentions the karamat of the awliya, for example. Why? Well, because to refute the Mu'tazila, who don't believe in the karamat al-awliya. And he also mentions the imama and the order of the four khulafa, to go against those who are against some of the khulafa. And he also mentions so many different things, like the salah, like praying behind a sinner, to refute the khawarij. So in reality, it had nothing to do, like wiping over the socks, had nothing to do with aqeedah. It's not a aqeedah mas'ala. And believing the karamat al-awliya is not a aqeedah mas'ala. But in reality, he mentioned them in the books of aqeedah to show that that we are different from Ahlul Sunnah, we are different. So, and then necessity was to protect Islamic sciences, like usul al-fiqh, for example. The fundamentals of jurisprudence, for example, or the terminology in jurisprudence, and the fundamentals of the knowledge of hadith. All these sciences, they were in reality what they were invented to help protect the Islamic sciences, like so that nobody would come and in reality turn the religion into what he believes to be true, but rather that there have to be certain standards, and that there has to be a framework wherein one operates, and that there are criteria which need to be present in one before being allowed to give a verdict or use these tools and so forth and derive rulings. Clarification is to help understanding religion. What do I mean by that? Barakallahu fikum. Like tafsir and ilm al-hadith, for example. Tafsir is a knowledge. It's not just looking and understanding. No, this knowledge was in reality created or shaped to help us to understand religion. And then facilitation is the categorization of rulings. Like we had fiqh, for example. Now, what is wajib? Because the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they had the fiqh salaf. What was the fiqh salaf? They would look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam doing something, and they would do it without asking themselves whether it was obligatory or not. So now we had these thousands of hadith, some of them which seem to be in contradiction with one another, some of them seeming to forbid something, and then then another one seemed to be encouraging that same thing. So how are we now going to row our boat through that stream of hadith and prevent ourselves from drowning in that ocean of knowledge? So this is why they created to facilitate the understanding and so much more. And some would add that there's also description. So that would be a fifth one. Describe. What do I mean with describing? I mean like nahu, like for example grammar. Grammar in reality and tajweed, these two, they already existed. The practice of it existed before the theory of it. So in reality, they were speaking in harmony with the rules that we have today, but our rules rather are in harmony with their speech, and not their speech was in harmony with our rules. And we found this, like the ulama said, through من خلال التتبع والاستقراء, يعني by following and tracing, and reading everything. So this is then how we came to the conclusion that the fa'il is marfu', and it can be marfu' with a dhamma, al-waw, al-alif, wal-nun. And so anyway, and the same with tajweed, ikhfa, idgham was already practiced, but our scholars listened to the reading which was orally transmitted and then gave it a name. Okay, so these are the different reasons why one writes. So now, if we want to understand the knowledge of Aqeedah, then we have to go back in time. So consider this to be a time machine, and I am your pilot. So welcome for flying with Imam Van Ael Airways. Bismillah. So let's have a look, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we need to go back in time, back to the time of the Arabs. The Aqeedah issue, barakallahu fikum, or the differences in Aqeedah is actually very special. And the reason why it's special, because the Aqeedah issue is nothing more than a linguistic one. Yes, a philosophical debate as well, but at the basis, when we are going to look at the reason why the Salafiyah, for example, and these are the two prominent today, the Salafiyah on the one hand and the Asha'ira, and add to them the Maturidiyah on the other hand, yani, are debating, yani, when you are going to shed a light on the reason, the core reason of their differences, then it's in reality lugha. It is the Arabic language. So to understand the reason why people differ about Aqeedah, one needs to go back in time to look at the strength of this language, the nuances, and the way the Arabs of old spoke in particular. Now, so the Arabic language which we speak today, even the Arabic which the Arabs are talking today, is not the Arabic language, and is not the same structure which was used by the Arabs of old. This is the first thing you need to know. Like the many Arabs today speak a translated Arabic in Arabic. So the Arabs, the shorter your sentence was, the more eloquent you were considered to be. So an Arab will not say, and the example I give very often is, أتيتك ليلة أمس فضربت بابك فلم تكن في بيتك. You know, this when you hear this, then oh, mashallah, the brother speaks Arabic. Look, mashallah, it's true, there are Arabic words, but it's not the Arabic ruh. Now, if you just say تركت بابك أمس وأنت غائب, أو وكنت غائبا, أو تركت بابك أمس وليس من أحد, done. يعني طرق الباب is during the night. نعم طرق. So if I just need to say, why all the fi'l? أتيتك ليلة أمس فضربت بابك ولم تكن موجودا في البيت. I'm sorry, when I hear this, my hair stands up and I say, this is not Arabic. It are Arabic words, and the sentence might be, from a grammatical point of view, might be okay. It carries a meaning, but it doesn't carry a ruh. It doesn't carry the Arabic ruh. So when we want to understand the Aqeedah properly, then we have to go back to the Arabic language of old. How did the people back in the days understand the Arabic language? When they heard things about hands of Allah, face of Allah, shin of Allah, what did they understand? When the verse was revealed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, that He sent down min al-an'ami thamaniyata azwaj. He sent down, anzala, from the cattle 8 different species, or different in pairs. So how did they understand it? Did they really understand, like, oh, there it was, the cattle was coming down from the sky? Is that the way they understood it, or how? So we have to go back to these Arabs in order for us to understand them. So in reality, we go through four different stages. The first one is the pre-Islamic one, which is in reality the most important one. I mean, from a linguistic point of view, and to understand the Aqeedah, because you should know the prophetic era, the Quran was revealed in this language. The Quran was not revealed in that language or this language. It was revealed in this one right here. So we need to go back to that, right? Because if we don't, then we will end up not understanding the Aqeedah. So when you have a look at the Arabs before Islam, you will come to the conclusion that their pride was in three things. It was in a poet in their tribe. It was a warrior who could ride a horse. And then three, it would be a soothsayer. And the stronger each one of these three was, the more your tribe was considered to be powerful, especially the poet. And the poet, why? Because the poets, and we're still talking about this here, you should know that the Ashhur al-Hurum, this was actually already back in the days of the Arabs. Now, these were months where they would not fight one another. They would not fight one another. They would gather together. So there was a caravan that would go to these different towns and it would stop, right? And everywhere they came, there would be battles in poetry, in camel racing, and so much more, until they would end up in the most important spot where all the best poets of each town now would gather and would come to. Now, so they would all go to that place, and then they would have these fights, they would have everything, but the climax and the pinnacle was the poets engaging in war, like we have today, like we have a rap battle, for example. We have these spoken words. Now we have the spoken word. Well, if you think the spoken word is of a high standard, then try to read, and of course, now it's beautiful, right? So I'm not denigrating or saying it, minimalizing the effort which is put in it. But if you're going to compare it with how the Arabs used to compete with one another in the Arabic language and in poetry, then you would say, oh my God, they are really strong. Because even people who have a deep knowledge of the Arabic language, whenever they engage in the pre-Islamic poetry and adab and literature, then very often they come out with an understanding of no more than 45%. Even people who are rooted in the Arabic language need dictionaries when they go back to them. Now, why is it important to know this? Because this is the language now. These people whom we barely understand with our modern Arabic now are the ones upon whom and in whose midst the Quran was revealed. And this is why one of my scholars during my studies, Dr. Abdullah, Professor Abdullah Al-Masri, when I was in the Free University of Brussels in Rue de la Limite, for the Master of Usul al-Fiqh, which I didn't finish, which I didn't complete, he was there and he said, Sulayman, we will not understand the power of the Arabic in the Quran until we get to the level of the pre-Islamic poets. Because they, regardless of their strength in the Arabic language, were stupefied by the Arabic in the Quran. While people who have no deep-rooted knowledge of the Arabic, they seem to be finding the Quran quite not complex. Why say, Qul huwa Allahu ahad? I mean, why couldn't the poets come with the same thing? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala challenged them and said, come, all of you. Let's come with the same thing as my servant. Come, and all of you gather. One ayah, one surah. Nobody did it. Why? Why? Because the Arabic language was too strong. The Arabic language tackled the Arabs. And the divine or the miracle of the Quran is a linguistic one to start with. And of course, also the harmony in its rulings and justice and all-inclusiveness and so much more, battle against racism, battle against oppression of women and so much more. Yani, so all of that is there. But the Arabic language, yani, subhanAllah, is a miracle. So when we now see that these Arabs, they used to write these poems every year, and the best of the poems would be attached to the Kaaba. It would be attached to the Kaaba, right? And then, you know, people would sing it or read it for the remaining year, for the remains of the year. So, and there are either 3 mu'allaqat or 5 or 7 or 10. The scholars differ. I'm not getting into detail with the beautiful sharh of Zamzami and others. So anyway, that was the pre-Islamic era. So now, in the midst of these people, the Quran was revealed. So if we want to know how they understood language, then we need to go back to the pre-Islamic era. And then you will find, barakallahu feekum, that they had a lot of figurative speech. A lot. Like saying, I wish I were an apple. Naam, I wish I were an apple. He said that you would smell. So now you say, why does he want to be an apple? Because back in the days of the Arabs, they had different apples coming from different parts of the world, and they would put a wooden stick in the apple, and then it would be like a scent going around. So they would put these wooden sticks which would absorb, and back in the days, yani apples were very organic, right? So they would have this beautiful smell, and the smell would fill the room, and then people would smell it. And I said, I wish I was the apple you smelled, right? And then he said, I wish I was an earring on your ear so that I could endlessly fall down without reaching your shoulder. Now, why is he saying this? Because one of the beauties or one of the signs of beauty amongst the Arabs was that a woman would have a long neck, and also that she would have a small tiny gap between her teeth, but just a small tiny one, right? So, and this is why he says, I wish I was an earring on your ears so I could drop eternally without reaching your shoulders. So if we don't understand this, and we don't understand that each Arabic poem is divided into 3 parts, which is the introduction, and then we have the what? We have the core, and then we have the yani that with which they finish their poem. And that was always the same in al-ghazal. And you have the poems of the slaves, the slaves who started who became highway robbers, and then they were very strong at poetry, the Sa'alik. And so when you are going to look at this now, it's only then that you are going to understand there is something more going on than just saying Allah has a hand. Okay, it's a real hand. Now, but we are going to have a look at this, and because when we go back to that time, we will see this. So we have the pre-Islamic one, then we have the prophetic era, where the people just understood it. They understood it. They did, you know, about the Quran. The companions radiallahu anhum didn't ask a lot of questions, but if you see that they asked questions about minor things, don't you think that because in the pre-Islamic history, they wouldn't believe that God had hands and a face, that he would have a shin and fingers and nails. That's not the way they believed in Allah. Because in the pre-Islamic era, yes, they believed in many gods, but they also believed in the upper God. The upper God. And this is why they say, we only worship them لِيُقَرِّبُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفَى, like in Surah Al-Zumar. Yani we only worship them so that they would draw us closer to Allah. So they would worship God through these statues, which is shirk, of course, because they would ask from these gods. So they would say that the upper God resides partially in this one, partially in that one, and that his power was divided amongst these different gods whom they shaped then into different statues. So when you're going to look at this, barakallahu feekum, they didn't believe that God had hands. They would say that one has hands, that one has feet, that's the statue, but not the real God. So now when the Quran was revealed and it was speaking about the attributes of Allah, face of Allah, hands of Allah, feet of Allah in the Sunnah, and so much more, then definitely if they would have thought that it meant now that they had to believe in a God with a face and hands and fingers and nails, that they would have asked the Prophet ﷺ. They would have said, Ya Rasulullah, does this mean now that we need to believe that God looks like a human but not like a human in reality? So but they never ask questions about this, but they ask questions about so many other things. Like the word dhulm, for example. They came to the Prophet ﷺ, they said, Ya Rasulullah, everybody does dhulm, because Allah said, and the one that does dhulm, we will let him taste a painful punishment. He said, Ya Rasulullah, ma minna ahad illa wa yadhimu nafsahu. Ya Rasulullah, everybody amongst us wrongs him or herself. He said, this is not the dhulm Allah is referring to. He said the dhulm is the one to which Luqman was referring to his son. لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم. Yani, do not associate partners to Allah, because the shirk is a great dhulm, and it's a major dhulm. So this is when they understood it. The same when he said, يعني حتى يتبين لكم الخيط الأبيض من الخيط الأسود من الفجر. Yani, that the two threads, the white one and the black one, are what are distinguishable, or yani, meaning it's not the thread. So one said, Ya Rasulullah, I kept two threads, a white one and a black one, under my pillow, and I could, always see the difference. Yani, I couldn't see a difference between them. And they said, no, it is sunset and sunrise. So anyway, this is the time of the Prophet ﷺ. They didn't have any questions about it. Then we come to the time of the companions, and that is where it starts. Now, like at the very beginning with the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, in the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, we didn't have that problem. In the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, you saw that some of the Arabs were now afflicted by the non-Arabs who were embracing Islam, meaning their Arabic was afflicted. Their Arabic now was, touched a little bit. Now there was some humidity on it, but it was still removable. So that was not a problem. And then in the time of Ali radiallahu anhu, it really started that people saw that now, because of so many, and that brings us here now, between the time of Ali radiallahu anhu wa karramallahu wajhahu on the one hand, now, and this here, right? So when he was in power, then Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali, and you can also say Du'li, he came to Ali radiallahu anhu and he said, my daughter made a mistake in the Arabic language. She told me, Ma ajmalu sama, yani, what is the most beautiful thing in the sky? But I told her the moon or the sun or whatever. She said, this is not what I'm asking you. I'm not asking you anything. He said, then say it again. He said, Ma ajmalu sama. And then he said again, al-qamar. And she said, I'm not asking, I'm saying that I'm astonished. He said, oh my daughter, open your mouth, meaning say ma ajmal as-sama, not ma ajmalu sama. So the Arabic language is very, very easy to pronounce wrongly, because the end of a word actually represents the position that the position or the role that the word is in or has. Now, so the position that it is in or the role that it has. So anyway, then he went to Ali radiallahu anhu and he said, Yani, come back tomorrow. And then he gave him a piece of paper and he read, he said, the fa'il, the one who does something, is marfu' and so forth. So he wrote like 2-3 sentences, gave it to Abu al-Aswad al-Du'li, and he said, go in this way, in hada nahu. And this is why nahu is called nahu, because one of the meanings of nahu is a direction or a way of doing something. So he said, Yani, go this nahu. So now Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali, he compiled a book, but that book got lost. So we didn't find the remains of his book, but that would have been the first book in grammar ever. So now we have a lot of the companions. After the companions, we have the Islamic Imperia, expanding. Now the Islamic Khilafah is expanding, and a lot of non-Arabs enter into Islam. This brings two things. Some of them embraced Islam merely for the sake of falling under the protection of the Muslimin, not because the Muslimin were killing everybody who wouldn't be a believer, because the Muslims would accept people of other beliefs to live with them. No, rather they would protect them, and they would pay a tax, but the tax that was less than the zakat that people would have to pay, and that would through that they would be protected. They would even be accompanied while traveling, and so much more. They were allowed to believe, to live up to their beliefs, and so much more. So anyway, but some of them, they were interested in entering into the Deen for that protection, meaning that they were not convinced that Islam was the truth, but they were not allowed, or rather to change Islam So they started introducing some of the deviant thoughts into the Islamic creed. So that was one. Secondly, the language. They didn't understand the language. And figurative speech, as we will see later on, is one of the most difficult things to understand in language. And some of them deliberately became Muslim to corrupt Islam from the inside. Like even in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to that in Surah Al-Imran, when he says, Yani, become Muslim in the end of the night. وَكْفُرُوا آخِرَهُ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. Yani, become Muslim in the broad daylight when everybody can see it, and in the end of the day, leave Islam. So that people with doubt in their heart now would return back to us and leave Islam. So this has always existed. So these are the 4 stages that we are going through. So what I want to show now bi'idhnillahi azza wa jalla is the last part before we get into the book next time and provide you with much more information and adillah and what the meaning is of Aqeedah, of Al-Sunnah, of Asha'ira, what the Ash'ari Aqeedah is, who the ulama were that were Ash'aris. Are they deviant people? Are they human shayateen? Or were they always the majority of Muslims? But when you go to figurative speech, you will see that yes, there's figurative speech in the Arabic language, but the people, and then I refer to the Mujassima, the anthropomorphists, and the Salafiyya, whom according to me are not anthropomorphists in the same way that our scholars would refer to them in the past. But definitely I believe that there's a portion of it in it. And what does that mean, anthropomorphism? It is that you are saying that God has human traits, in very simply put very simply. So the Salafiyya would say there's no figurative speech in the Quran, and some of them would say there is figurative speech in the Quran, but not with regards to the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is a strange thing, because the Quran is revealed in the Arabic language, says Allah. So where is the proof then that this would apply only to that which is not, which has nothing to do with Allah? Then they go philosophical, which they actually accuse the Ash'ari of. And they say, yes, but if it were to be, if the possibility were to exist that it is figurative speech, then what would then be decisive? What would we then say what it stands for? And the Quran is supposed to be clear, right? So then we say, but that's a philosophical debate. And it's a aqli debate that you are having, and you are against using the aql in aqeedah. So you're not allowed to do this. So don't explain the characteristics at all. Don't even add to it a real hand, but in a way that Allah wants it. All of this was not mentioned by the Salaf. It's not mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ and Sahaba radiallahu anhu. So let's continue. So figurative speech is difficult to understand. It is in reality the most difficult thing for a child. It is the last thing which a child can do. Now, it is take things, understand that there is figurative speech. Like for example, if you would say, give me your hand to a very small child, it would just go like this. Give me a hand. Okay, here you go. No, I actually meant in my language, it doesn't mean give your hand. It just means like, help me. You students who are learning English, roll up your sleeves tomorrow. Tomorrow they all come and they roll up their sleeves. Okay, so when you need to do a lot of effort in my language, we say, add a teeth. So are you really going to add a tooth or teeth? It doesn't make any sense. So in my language, we say, I have an operation behind my back. Now behind my back, meaning behind me. So now if you say this to someone who doesn't know my language at the very beginning, I had an operation behind my back. Oh, subhanAllah, did you fall on your back? No, actually it was in my head. It was here. He says, why did you say behind your back? You see where I'm coming from. That is the way that now these new Muslims in the Arabic, in the time after the Sahaba radiallahu anhum would understand the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when for example you read something like wanting the face of Allah, then we need to look at the etymology. We need to look at where it comes from and how the Arabs used to say it. Because if you say that it is to emphasize on the fact that Allah has a face, then we go back to the Arabic language in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that the Quran was revealed. And then we see that in their poetry and their literature, whenever somebody was angry with them, they would say, please turn your face to me. Please turn your face. Meaning they weren't actually attributing a face to that person, but it was rather say, be pleased with me again. Because the Arabs, when they would angry, they would turn their face. And then when you wanted to know whether they were happy or not, you would say, please turn your face to me, right? So it was actually merely to say, be pleased with me. So this is why, إِلَّا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ رَبِّهِ الْأَعْلَى, only for the sake of the face of his Lord, it means for the contentment and rejoicement, yani for his Lord to be pleased with him, right? So, but we are going into detail, right? I'm just sharing some of these thoughts so that you might understand them. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, nothing is like him, nothing is similar to him, nothing, in no way, and he's a Sami al-Basir, meaning that yani, he already said that nothing is like me. And this is the basic verse for Aqeedah, which we will explore yani, in the third class, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same thing with a shin, for example. The Arabs, when they would engage in war, they would mount a horse or they would mount a camel, and then a part of their shin would be unveiled, no? Because they were wearing these long clothes, right? And then eventually it was no longer, come on, it's time to engage in war. It was rather, yani, unveil your shin. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, يَوْمَ يُكْشَفُ عَنْ سَاقٍ, that day the shin will be unveiled, then the Arabs used it to engage in war, and then eventually it ended up in using it for everything which was difficult. Like we would say, okay, you better roll up your sleeves. They would say, expose your shin. And so now people say, oh, this means that Allah has a shin. And I mean, it looks like, and this is what Badr Deen of Jama'ah will make very clear in his book, that the approach of the Mujassima, of the anthropomorphists, or those which follow a kind, in a certain way, that path or that vision, that way of thinking, he said they are actually children. They are children. They look at these nusus fi kitabillah and sunnati Rasulillah sallallahu alaihi wasallam like a child would do. So with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yani, as I said, yani, this was merely the introduction. So bi'idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, next time we will have another look, and we will explain to you who Badr Deen ibn Jama'ah is, what إيضاح الدليل is, and then we will read from his book bi'idhnillahi azza wa jal. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this beneficial. Ameen. It is time now, and in about 5 minutes, I think, or 10, I don't know, we will start with at-tawahhum.
Inshallah. That class will be on a different link, so I will post that on the group for everyone, inshallah ta'ala. So Jazakallah khair, Ustad. We'll see you in 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.